Did you see that the credit card got sorted? Yeah, now. Elevated up.
Okay, I will call to order this August meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. Deputy Mayor Carver is excused for the evening. Do we have any changes to the agenda? I do have one addition under old business related to our EV charging project. There are no other changes. Move on to our consent agenda, which includes our abstract of claims for the month, as well as meeting minutes from our July meeting. The abstract for the month includes $406,926.36 in the general fund. Out of the general fund to be exact. An EMS billing abstract totaling $60,558.89. Water fund abstract totaling $120,062.32. Sewer fund totaling $36,172.84. And trust and agency abstract totaling $56,271.62. Looks like there's a water bond payment in the water abstract. And so I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Yes, second.
Any comments, questions, or need to review any of the items in the consent agenda? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item number 4 is our first public comment period. I don't see any member of the public online or in person. Unless you guys have anything non-village you wanted to opine on, okay. We'll move to our reports of representatives. Ann is here from the county. Whenever you're ready, Ann, we're ready for you.
Thank you. First, I'll go over June sales tax. Overall for the county, it was down 2.13%. Year to date, it was down 0.47%. Municipal sales tax was down quite a bit. It was down 8.16%. And year to date, down 2.56%. And there could be a number of reasons that this is happening. Our sales tax goes up and down throughout the year. A good part of that reason has to do with the way that the state reports it to us. And we also know that there's some softening in the jobs market and possibly some other economic factors going on. We, at the last legislature meeting, we passed a resolution to go over the tax levy if needed. We were hoping not to, but we had voted it down a few months ago, so that it came back around. A legislator brought it back around just to have that. We passed a resolution to explore what it would be to have, what would be the impacts of having a countywide minimum wage that would be higher than the state minimum wage. And we had a number of people from the community come out and speak in favor of this. What we're basically doing is doing an exploratory, starting an exploratory process and hiring a consultant to help us with this. So stay tuned for that. See, we heard from a number of people in the community and from our Human Rights Commission and our Human Rights Department that there's been over the last year or so, there's been increased incidences of racial profiling, racial targets in the community, and including children. So we're encouraging people, if you see something, say something, speak up. You know, a lot of times people say things and make comments, target people, and nobody speaks up. So we're that was from the folks that experienced it. They said that it's really hard because people like right near them don't typically say something. So please speak up, because some people are feeling more emboldened to say things that are racist, and we want to, you know, protect folks in our community. And that was all I had.
Any comments or questions for Ann? Thanks, Ann. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Item number 6, reports from this board. The only item I have, well, were you going to make mention of the pro-housing community designation?
Oh. Sure, yeah.
I'll leave that for you to
All
mention.
right.
Do we have need of our second meeting this month?
I have need for it not to be.
I don't have any need. I'm gonna be meeting with Matt regarding the fire, but other than that, oh.
So then we will formally notice the cancellation of our second monthly meeting so that we aren't double booked with CBDR.
Can I say,
Yeah,
at the next meeting, I was supposed to propose an orange project. If that's going to be canceled, do you have any concerns against Ben's request to kind of at least address it today?
which part?
The raises.
We're not gonna be able to discuss it tonight. I think Ben wanted to be here to discuss.
So our plan.
So we'd be looking at 2 more weeks, because our September meeting is the 9th. Which is a little bit earlier. That's okay.
I'll meet you. I don't want, I'm not asking for a meeting just for.
Yeah, Ben, I mean. I think Ben wanted to hold off until he could be here. Yeah,
Also,
we'll have to put it on the agenda for the 9th.
they made it, which is to be effective. If you.
Right.
Um. I think we will resume our twice monthly meetings in September.
That's a good time to start.
We'll see. We get there, but I think we will. All right, fire, Marcia.
Nothing major. We had 36 calls, 2 structure fires. I think they had two pretty scary rescue situations, which our younger volunteers were very commended as to their professionalism and their training on how they handled those specific situations. And so those went very, very well. They're just continuing with their training this week. They're doing the repelling, they're doing open water rescue, confined space training, and motor vehicle training. Our volunteers are very concerned about the new proposed OSHA regulations towards volunteer fire companies. Pretty much because they're raising the level of those regulations almost to the level of professional firefighter. And they said that their concern is loss of volunteerism simply because they put in tons of hours already. people have to hold full-time jobs during their volunteer time. And obviously the concern is, will you have professional firefighters that's their job? So they could take time off from their job, they could do training while they're on their job. But these people have to, our volunteers either would have to take time off from work. Which is obviously something a lot of people can't do right now. And that's family time and takes away family time. So one thing that they were discussing that, within the last 20 years, our volunteerism has gone down almost 50%. So, we're gonna see, I don't see an increase in volunteerism along those lines. And especially if they tighten up the regulations for the training structure to be equal to that, almost equal to that of a paid volunteer or paid firefighter, that would make it difficult. I think some of those regulations will also include perhaps us having to replace equipment earlier than what our regular schedule is. So that's gonna have a financial effect on us too, considering that we lay out a very specific timeline for when we need to replace trucks and equipment and everything. And if they make that sooner and a fire truck is $1 million, that makes things really difficult. But I think, is it Kirsten Gillibrand, I think is kind of making them look at the overall picture and saying that this is really going to impact smaller villages and smaller towns. And maybe there, you can't compare apples to apples when it comes to that. So we're hoping that maybe that won't come to fruition the way that they think. And there's going to be a lot of paperwork involved, a lot more paperwork involved. So that makes it tougher too. So that was just basically some of the discussion.
Okay, good. Any questions for Marsh? As I mentioned, Deputy Mayor Carver is excused for the evening. We will have some potential EMS hires to discuss in executive session at the end of the meeting. DPW, water, sewer, CPR, and farmers market.
Yes, so I'll start with the first item here, Congress Street stormwater quotes. So we've been working on this project for quite some time to do some stormwater repair on Congress Street. We, if you'll recall, approved purchasing materials, I think at our last meeting for this, and we now have a quote for the actual work around the labor, I guess, around the effort. We were hoping to get multiple quotes. I know Dusty spent a lot of time on the phone with at least 2 different groups, and we've only been able to get one quote. Formally, the other quote was going to be about the same price anyhow. Yeah. Yeah, and I'd like to move ahead. I mean, we've been kicking this effort down the road quite a bit for quite a while, and I'd like to propose that we accept the PNS excavating quote for $20,000 to do the actual install of the materials that we purchased previously. And I'd love to have more quotes, but we just have not been able to get additional quotes.
Yeah, you run into the same situation we do with the fire department. It's like a lot of it is so specialized. There's only a few companies that do it or one.
Yeah.
This is the remainder of that last DASD grant.
Yeah, yep. So we purchased the materials so we could do it under our, taxing and so forth. And so this is just for the install piece of it. So I will make a motion that we accept the PNS excavating quote for Congress Street stormwater remediation work. I'll move that. You can second.
You can second it.
There's a motion and a second. Any additional questions, discussion?
I don't think your microphone's on, by the way.
Nobody gets to hear.
Now we can hear it in a second. Is there anything else, Dusty, you wanted to add to that?
No.
Yeah.
Right, well, if there are no comments or questions, all in favor of accepting the PNS excavating quote as presented, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay,
All right, then the other quote in here has a bit more conversation. That's why I asked Dusty to join. There are two Schmidt's wholesale quotes in the Dropbox. These are for new water meter read heads. So we have water meter reads heads that are remote reads. So currently the DPW drives around and does a radio read of everyone's meter just from their truck. They don't have to get in your house. We installed most of them, what, like a decade ago, and they're kind of getting to their, yeah, so they're getting to the end of their usable life. And so we're starting to look, what's the next evolution of these that we want to go with. And we're particularly looking right now because we just installed, or a bunch of new meters were just installed up at Compass Mobile Home Park. And we need read heads for those meters specifically. So we're kind of using this as an opportunity to think, where do we want to go next? And so Dusty's recommendation, and if you have anything to add, please do, is to go with cellular read heads. And so instead of driving around in a truck every month, these would use the cell network to continuously, on some every couple of hours or something sort of basis, let us know how much water is being used, which reduces time driving around getting all the reads, also gives us the ability to do more real time. Hey, we noticed your meter is going crazy. Do you have a water leak? Did you have a water main pipe service, line break while you were down in Florida for this winter, those sorts of things. And we can just better track usage right now every month. It just gets a little tricky sometimes if a read is off, what's going on. This way we have much more consistent data over time.
Also track fire requests for every 2 months. So if someone calls and said, after we read, somebody usually will say, hey, my meter received high, can you read it again 3 days later? And we say, yes, but water obviously went through your meter. We can't tell you where or how. It's not running right now, so whatever was fixed, which usually winds up being a stuck toilet, and nobody ever seems to want to believe that once we tell them that is the cause. This will tell us, I believe it sends a ping or whatever every 4 hours to let us know any meter that is on cellular service what your meter read is. And so we can choose to read every bi-monthly, but then if someone wants to call and say, hey, or if it sends the ping to the system and the program lets us say, hey, this user who normally uses so many gallons has a lot of water flowing right now, we can call and alert them. The other main reason for going this way is the radio read heads that we currently have are no longer produced. It's through Badger company, they don't produce these anymore. So we can't go with those moving forward. The options are to go with this cellular read style, which is all set to run with the programs we have. Or we get these other, I can't remember what they're called, CE or ME reader heads. And then we need all the programming for the computers. We need a new reader computer to carry around. And so now we're carrying around 2 handheld computer devices in the truck when we're reading. Whereas the cellular one just sends to the laptop or the computer or tablet, whatever that we already have. There's no need for any other hardware purchases except the register heads.
Is there software purchase?
So there's the software that we have should already work with it, but there will be a cellular fee, and I believe that's considered like $1 per register head
Okay,
that we have, and that price goes down the more reader heads we get. So once you have 500 reader heads, it drops to like 98 cents for, it's not a big difference, but it does decrease the more heads in the system we have that are cellular read. We have a huge credit with Schmidt Wholesale because when all the meters and register heads were purchased for Compass 2 years ago, the meters all went in and were fine, they match our meters, but the register heads they bought 2 years ago were the wrong style. They don't work with our system. And so we had to return that. So we have, I think that the cost right now for 150 meter heads was like 42 grand.
Yep.
We have a credit of 17,000 and change. I can't remember exactly.
Oh, that's the other quote there. So the two quotes, one is -17,
Yes,
so that's our credit, I see.
Now, right now, to just get the amount of homes that are in Compass, we could order only like 120 meters and that would cover all of that, and then we can discuss with people forward. You know, how many we want to order to have on hand to start replacing meters that are going bad in the village.
How long is it gonna take to have the whole village replaced?
So a lot of that depends
How
on.
many meters are there?
There's roughly 850 meters, 850, now that's not all currently 3/4 inch radio head, so I would say it would take 800 to 815 of individual household meters. Buildings like the schools, a couple restaurants have larger meters that won't require that style.
And how long, how many can you do a year?
It kind of depends on the residents, how quickly we can get permission to get in, because we have to go, when we did. So they started with this system before I started here, and it took us. Probably 10 years to get everybody, but I don't know how hard of a push there was put out. Once I started, we started making a hard press on. Getting in homes, we sent out letters, we knocked on doors, and this would actually be a lot less. Time, because we don't have to change the whole meter out, it's just a quick swap of the meter head, there's no pulling of an actual meter. Saves time, so I think realistically, 2 years, maybe 3, we could have everybody switch. If we put a hard press on it, send out notices. Go door to door and say. We need 2 minutes of your time, and we come in and
It's a 5-minute process.
it lasts just to change the meter head, it's that quick, it really is. It's one screw, the meter twists off, you put the new one on. And you're in and out. Whereas when we did it 10 years ago, you had to go in, you had to schedule, because you had to shut their water off, pull the whole meter. Run a new line, it was at least a 10 to 15 minute job, so. The biggest thing is getting permission from people to get in their house. We ran into trouble with 30 to 50 customers that didn't wanna grant us permission, so.
So what's the question for us?
I think the question for us tonight, well, actually, the last question for you, Dusty, is did you look at where this could come from? Because I've got numbers between 17 to 26 or so.
Originally, this was pulled right from the water, I think it's. 8640.4, it's not contractual, it's water source of power pumping in.
Oh, from there, okay.
It's what we usually pull our bigger water equipment out of valve and whatnot, but the last time when they did this, when they bought the meters 2 years ago, it came out of that account. So I would assume.
And were we kind of planning for that? This year in the budget, to your
Yes,
knowledge?
yes, it was
Okay.
budgeted in that would be expected.
All right, so that is. Where is that? Yeah, it's the source of supply. I don't see an 86, so
And if this also is, we're not changing your sewer flow. With the sewer program there, any burden in this month, or just the one?
I mean, I don't see a reason to switch it. It really is more about water. I mean, I could see an argument if we wanted to. But we also have some people who are on sewer, who have water, gets a little funky in some places. It's not, yeah. I would leave it underwater, so. All right, so we need to figure out a line, but then what I would recommend. Is we at least start with the 120 for Compass, because I know that they want to keep moving. And then maybe what we should start figuring out is. how to probably over the next year, like build a plan for the next couple of years. Every year we put in, you know, enough dollars for whatever amount, so I can, I'll take a. I can start working that up. But let's see, so did you know what the name of, what was the name of the line you were thinking of? All
Water source of supply, power.
right, there's like a purser, a stipend, equipment, and a contractual line for that.
It would be the contractor.
The contractual, okay, so that's 8320.4 is what I see.
Yeah, okay.
All right,
That's-
yeah, so then I would. So I'll make a motion that we purchase 120. Reader heads from Schmidt's Wholesale. So that's less than this current quote. And I have, doing the math, have that minus the refund that we have, should be a total of $16,626.34.
Do I need an exact number or do not?
Let's do up to 18,000. Just to give it a rough number. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Does that seem like that gets you in a good spot? All right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to purchase 120 cellular reed water heads for a total not to exceed 18,000. Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
All right. And then my,
Before you-
yeah, go ahead. Sure. Yeah. Go for it.
All that rain on Friday, and we still never exceeded 28 on the MGDs at the sewer plant, so something is working. Good. Whether it's little things all at once building up or changes made to the sewer system up at Compass, it is clearly, we're headed in the right direction finally. We really didn't point out the too many issues, one little one over here on Ridge Street, behind Keith's house. Still, because that pulls all the drainage from South Street and that side of town that way. There's some drainage that cuts through his backyard that causes some problems, but that was about the extent of our water issues, so lucked out.
did you share that with MRB?
I did, I talked with Matt, Friday and this morning, and then. NICEAG has called in a dig safe for.
McClellan?
So I assume within the next week. You should see them,
Finally?
you should see them paving that. That's not a guarantee, but I know they have, obviously it is now on their agenda to take care of it, so should be very soon.
That was the storm from January.
Yes, yes, so, I know part of waiting to pay has to do with settling out, because how deep they dug, they have to let the ground settle, otherwise the blacktop will settle out with it. But, after putting in multiple calls and getting multiple new contacts. We got to talk with someone that Nicholas called in, they're paying. It is on the list now,
Thank you.
be done.
Okay,
All right. And then the last note is, as Gordon mentioned, we were recently certified as a pro-housing community. So that is the conversation we started last month with some resolutions that we passed, and I took some time to put our zoning information into a spreadsheet. Tom Myers took significantly more time to put a bunch of permits and planning permits and building permits into a spreadsheet. Send that all off to the state, and recently, as of last week, we're given the word that we were certified for that, which then allows us to receive any grant funds should we we awarded them for some of the granting that we also submitted for last month, and we had approved some resolutions for here. So that is some great news. There is a press release hopefully going out soonish, and we can tomorrow then, and then we can feel good about being a pro-housing community and trying to get some more grant funding for I, even though we're making good progress, we can continue to make even more progress.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. That is it for me.
Next up is police, Joanna.
Thank you. I don't have a report on stats for August, just some major. I guess the most significant thing that happened, unfortunately, in the last month is that somebody did try to break in to the police department office. Unsuccessfully, thankfully, but there is some repair that has to be done for that. And because it is an old building, some of that repair will not be to its original, I guess, facade of the building. So, and that person has been arrested and has been charged, and I think arraigned potentially tomorrow, so. That was a major thing. And then I have two items. So in the grant that I mentioned 2 months ago, we're looking to spend that down. It was an $83,000 grant. Some of these items, they were, so when Chief Nelson wrote the grant, he had specific things in mind, and now that we actually have the grant, he's getting current quotes for those items. So because I wasn't here when he actually wrote the grant, which was more than 2 years ago, I'm not sure if some of these items were discussed. So one of the items that I sent to the trustees is this flock safety. So these are infrared cameras that actually look at vehicles only, license plates, and the look, model, make of vehicles. And it's part of this system within New York State. So major cities have them, and then some smaller departments are starting to get them as well. So they identify vehicles if somebody commits a crime and there is a vehicle to reference, they're able to track the vehicle with these infrared cameras. A couple of examples, at least how it would work locally, is if somebody were to put a skimming device on a machine, like a gas station machine, and somebody were to report that there was a vehicle, or if, let's say, one of our local gas stations, if they captured a vehicle on the camera, we'd be able to determine in which direction they went towards and potentially follow that car with these cameras, and find out who the perpetrator is. Another example is for Amber Alerts and elderly alerts. It's a great way to identify those vehicles and then again, try to find that person that is potentially in those cards that have been identified. So for this item, it is a 3-year contract for $38,100 that is being covered by this grant. The one thing to keep in mind is that we don't have to keep this particular this system if we can't afford it afterwards. It's just one of those things where it's part of the New York State network, and it would just add some security to our area. I think one of the things that Chief Nelson and I discussed is actually looking to see over those 3 years. What type of benefit we would, at least for our village, have. And after that, it would, like it says here, it's $12,000 per year, so it would carry a $12,000. Charge every year, so it would be something that we would have to budget in the future if we decided to keep it. So that is Flock. So, and I only sent the quote on Friday, so can I make a motion to?
Sure, and I don't
Purchase this
know if
item.
this made it into the Dropbox. to be
It
honest.
did.
No,
I
I
didn't see
don't
it.
see it.
Would you like me to put it there?
If you could, that'd be great. But all of this is covered by the
Grant?
tech grant.
Yes, the first 3 years is $38,100 is covered by this grant.
Do you want to take them one at a time? Do you want to go through,
I
go
can-
over each thing and then come back to it?
So the other two are a completely different system, so I'll take this one first
Okay.
and then the other two. So.
Did you and Chief discuss where these might be placed?
Yeah, yes. So the one caveat about these is that he does want to place them on the main road, but because it is not our road, he has to place them 25 feet away from that road, which would mean that he would have to have permission by some private residents. So he did have some suggestions on where to place them. It would be.
And I don't need to know like specifics. I think the idea I was mostly wondering is like, the intent is to mostly do Main Street. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he really cares if people know the location.
That's fair.
And this is the car identifier thingy?
Yes. It's called Flock Safety. So
And would this software be able to like identify something in particular, and if our vehicle isn't in that area, they would get a notification or?
so it only identifies vehicles. If it were another department that were looking for a particular vehicle, it would tell them whether or not it came through our area.
Okay. Seems a bit fancy. Okay,
The only thing that I would say is that
I just,
our main road is, I mean.
It is
we have a lot
yes,
of people
it's
that come through.
yeah, we do. We do, we're in a. And not always nice people, so yeah.
Right. And we could always track, one of the caveats about this grant is that any information that we receive from using any of this technology has to go into, there's a New York State system where they keep data.
Mhm.
So there will be a way to see whether or not it is useful for our village.
Okay, so there's a way to track that to see if it really is something that's worth paying for, right?
Right.
Okay. That was
Think about it,
fun.
the technology is pretty amazing for it to be able to do that for $1,000 a month. You
Yeah.
can track any vehicle where the system is set up.
Yeah.
I mean, it is pretty big brother, but it's.
Yeah,
It's also,
but I was
it's
just,
also fascinating that it can be done.
yes, I was just looking for,
And this particular one does not identify people, so.
right, just
Um,
vehicles.
Right. The other example I guess I would give, and I know this is just from working in banking and working in our security area at that time, is there actually was a huge ring that was devoted to taking personal checks from people and actually going through the bank drive-throughs.
Drive-throughs, I saw that, yeah.
And that is something that is occurring within our own area. I don't think they ever got to our area, but I know it happened as close as Watkins Glen. So it would have been able to,
Right,
you know, we would have
right,
been
they
able
move
to
on,
catch
they're,
them,
right.
right?
Okay,
So I will make a motion to purchase flock safety for a contract of 3 years at $38,100 on the grant money.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any additional comments? Conversation, questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
I,
Any opposed? Okay. Next up,
The other thing is, and I know this has been talked about for a while, is the replacement of our security cameras for the police department. The cameras right now, they're not of great quality and they're a lot older. The technology is also older. So it's become less reliable. And so part of this money was looking toward getting that funded. The chief made a decision to place the more expensive, I would say higher technology item on this grant. Although we do have 2 quotes from for cameras. So the one that we're looking at is called Vercata. And that is for $27,500 and it's a 5-year contract. It would, for those 5 years, it would completely be covered by the grant money. After that, we would be looking at maintenance fees, which we don't have an exact number, but from Chief Nelson, it was most likely around $250 to $350 per camera per year. The information that we get for the cameras actually is stored on the cloud and there is unlimited storage. There is a higher resolution and the software is updated by the actual manufacturer. Which is why it carries a higher price tag. So it is for 10 cameras. And the software and the installation. The other item, so Chief Nelson did try to get something that was comparable, but it's very difficult to compare items. So this one is the 10 cameras, but there is no real software updates that is continuous. It's like if the software is
dated.
right, nobody updates it.
Yeah.
It's also for 10 cameras. It's for fewer years. I think this one is for, well, there are no years because like I said, it's installed and done. And then we get, and then so the storage is internal, it's 2 terabytes on a hard drive. And that would have to be maintained by the village. And that's what it is. And that is for a lesser price tag, so we could potentially go with this item. But once it's out of date, once again, we would have to pay the full amount of what it would take to replace that in another, however many years. And that is for $14,888.
We were definitely getting more with the more expensive one. And the fact that they maintain it and update it is, that seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, Joe.
The second quote we got is the same system we have with the fire department. And I personally would not recommend it. It is down, far moving up. It's,
Ubiquity?
I think we had a different vendor, the Hawk Vision model came, but it's all internal and.
Okay. Good to know.
I don't know if it's the same camera. This says Ubiquity, Unify Protect.
So chief wants, and are you recommending the Bricadas?
I am.
Okay.
Lubricate. Higher resolution, it comes with 10 cameras. He will be placing a camera in the village office. Also outside, replacing the cameras that we currently have, plus adding, I think it's 2 or 4. So in a total of 10 cameras.
Okay, do you want to make the motion?
I will make a motion to purchase the Verkada cameras for $27,548.50.
We have a second.
Second.
Any additional comments, questions?
I'll just say the one thing which I mentioned in the email is just checking in with our IT on like how to best integrate all of this. I don't have a problem approving the quote. And if it turns out we don't need part of the networking gear or whatever, fine, but I would just check in with them to make sure that they're up for, or I mean, maybe if Blue Storm or whoever is gonna support it, but just that everything plays nicely.
Okay. I will talk to Chief Nielsen.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I'll just point out that most of that repair work, the police station shop is done. We did it,
Thanks.
we did it the next day. Chief called me in the morning and he said, okay, we've got rid of it, so it's all closed back in. We kind of went with his plans on what he wanted to have her done with each other. Couldn't rightfully redo the glass wall, so we framed it in, and I think he wants to use it as a
Bulletin board.
board, so it's all, other than putting whatever he wants to use there as a bulletin board, whatever we got everything close back in, and sit back in, so that will stay right there.
Any other comments or questions on the Bricada quote? Hearing none, then all in favor of approving the purchase quote as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Anything else for police? Or other than executive sessions?
Right. So I guess with those funds, we also we also purchased some portable radios that were under the threshold to bring here. They were able to be replaced. And it is Southern Tier Crime Analysis actually that takes all of the data that were from these systems that we're purchasing on the grant money. That will be using the data, I guess, to track crime or whatever they do in that office. And that is all I have for today. I'll have stats for July and September. And that's all.
All right, I'm gonna circle back to EMS because I completely forgot. Joel has something for us to consider. There is the new ambulance has been ordered.
It's about to, this is kind of the last meeting item, so one of the big questions is rebranding. Of dental rebranding, I suppose. Our uniforms, our logo, and everything kind of matches. Ultimately, this color theme became a theme because of our inheritance and people please talk about. And you need to work with that navy blue, which is also the, which we wear. And many people kind of look at the flag, give an opportunity to rebrand ourselves and kind of segregate ourselves from the fire department, just on a community aspect. Many people in the community probably, the majority of the still are volunteers with the fire department. And so it kind of gives us the ability to market differently a little bit. And it's a change. We've had the same kind of ambulance and same theme for God, since my childhood, so probably 25 to 30 years. What people do like is the design of the ambulance, so that wouldn't change. It would just be changing the color scheme to kind of match the ambulance. It is a big change and it's a village department, so I was kind of compelled to not make that decision solely. The other opportunity to save some money could be anytime you order an ambulance, you order it in the chassis in white or black. If we ordered it in black, it would save a couple $1,000 per purchase because the navy blue would go away, black on the yellow or green. All so it'd be a little bit less work, but I think a lot of us that do like this movie, like the navy, because there's some students.
Thoughts, comments? I usually ask other people when I need to match colors.
The fire department is also, so one of the big things to stay the same for people, the biggest argument is that they like being associated with the fire department. However, they already started changing their color as well, so they're moving to black and red instead of white and red as well. So one way or another, we're gonna be different from that, whether we change or whether they change.
And then this is, when you order a new one, it would be in these colors, or it's a repainting of existing?
No, it's just, it would be, I wouldn't repaint our other animals, but our new animals that would
To be in this.
would be this color.
Okay.
Is that blue lettering with a white outline?
I believe that the conversation, that might be gold leaf, it might be white. Or if it's gonna match the flag bar, it's a much lighter blue, kind of like her cup there.
Do you have a picture? I don't have one.
I think the word should be more predominant. I mean, they are on the red and white ambulance, obviously.
They certainly will be, that picture doesn't.
Yeah,
But I absolutely agree with you that. It can't be just a lighter shade of navy. Coat.
I'm a bad person to ask, because I'm a real traditionalist when it comes to stuff like that. Plus the recognition of an emergency vehicle,
Oh, yeah.
but
What is it?
That's.
The letters that lettering definitely.
I have-
prominent.
there's
Well,
bigger
that's only
fish to fry out in the color of the ambulance. I don't know.
The
about
yellow.
anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, if that were green or yellow, the lettering, I think it
Or
would
bright
look,
white.
or white, I think it would look better than blue on blue. I do like the newer color though. The only thing I would say is that we'd have to make sure that the residents are informed that these are our vehicles and not privatized
Yeah,
ambulance. Because once you change the color that people are used
Used
to.
to.
You know, they might say, no, I don't want that.
It might also help that it's almost kind of organically happening, because people see the flag car, they know the flag car. In a lot of. Just social media presence and kind of shifted to a look that made for flyers. At some level to kind of happen.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, I like
it.
is it more of a brighter green than what is printed out here, or?
It is, it's like the, you know, traffic, you see yellow traffic vests.
Yes,
It's kind of like a shade of that.
I think
So like a little-
But if there's really the flight cards, the same exact
Yeah.
colors.
We can go walk
Dusty does have a
outside.
picture.
See what-
Dusty has a picture of the fire car. We'll go on a field trip.
It's in the shades of.
Joel drove.
Oh, I see, I,
Like when we.
Parked in front.
oh, yeah, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then maybe the letter should be like the numbers are on that card. Really bright.
Well,
Does that?
I'm-
Changing what we do.
I'm happy to accept Joel's recommendation. I don't have a reason to say otherwise.
Times they are a changing. I don't care.
It's like, it's up to you.
Looks like it's up to you.
Well, good.
My only preference would be that the,
Although if you can match the colors of the flag card, that would.
yes,
That's.
If they're all-
exactly.
The same vinyl and paper I saved. So.
Yeah, and actually, if the words on this, the lettering on the side could be that bright green, that would be helpful, I think. Maybe bright green with like maybe a lighter blue outline or something, or white outline. Yeah,
The worst thing is people hate it, you gotta repaint it.
I just didn't want to be bad.
I'm just gonna have a comment about it.
Oh, no, you see what I said is that we
What'd they say?
accepted your
Personal
recommendation.
preference.
The word-
I don't like the color.
the wording was carefully chosen.
Maybe there can be like a promotional like kids day where. They can come and check out the new EMS truck so that people know what it actually looks like.
What's the delivery time?
It's September.
So I'll put it on my calendar.
Yeah, that would be a good,
All
you
of
know,
25, we can arrange for something at the school.
yeah. Because kids, you know, young adults and kids will, you know, that's what they're used to, that's what they recognize as.
My little caveat on this, and I will say, the department is very divided on, I don't care too much. Because
Yeah.
regradings are real.
Right.
And they have benefits, but. I came from an agency in Melbourne area that I worked for that had a line through the whole thing was line through the. And the whole capital district area knows what that is.
Right.
Right.
You and I would walk through like that's fun, you know, what, everybody knows that every. Premier agency in the area, it has to see stuff.
Yeah, that's what I would say, just some community interaction so that especially kids and everyone recognize something that's so different than what they're used to seeing. Interesting.
Good luck with the final decision.
It's all on you.
All right, clerk treasurer.
Yeah, okay, so I have some requests of the board, which are probably the most important thing, but I will then just start by saying that. We are gonna do a complete audit of every customer water sewer card, all 848, to make sure that all of the data and the tax map. For the property it's associated with and all of the billing information is accurate. So we're gonna begin that, and I'm hoping we can complete that before the September billing cycle. We inherited a program that had been used by many different people, and not, so it's just time. There's some indications that it's time. So that will be a significant effort, for Jess and I to tackle, looking at those 848 cards. But that's great. We're happy to do it. And just a reminder, I think maybe we alluded to it in the beginning, or Marshall, you mentioned, but the fire EMS budget session with the municipalities contracting municipalities has been set for Thursday, September 5th at 6 p.m. in the fire hall. And we'll all work with your fire EMS teams, commissioner, department heads to make sure that I've got budget materials in time for the mayor to review. If the meeting is the 5th, when do you want those? I'd said that I would make sure they were to the towns no later than the Friday, the 30th, so they would have a whole weekend and then some business days. If that's possible. I said it was a target. target August 30th. For that. It's 2 weeks, it's like 3 working weeks,
So then at the end of next week.
the end of next week. What do you think about that, Joel? Depending on how busy your season, I mean, if it's a busy season, then you like a busy week, then you have other time, right?
I've done a lot of work on it, but. Ben and I have not successfully met sometimes, so I haven't brought anything, and when, I don't want to do this.
Okay,
I don't-
well, I'll catch up with you and I'll see if there's anything I can
Beginning of
do.
the following week at the latest, I'd like a couple days before we send it to the towns.
So say that timing again, if you would. If I'm targeting Friday, you want how many days in advance of this sent to the town? It's probably a good way to ask.
The more the better.
5. Great.
1 is not enough,
Right.
2 probably not enough either.
Okay. And thanks
3.
everybody for filling out the doodle poll. I know no one likes to do that. Things are moving swimmingly. The deputy continues to make amazing strides in her comprehension of new materials. The hired bookkeeper, Michelle Wright, she's on hiatus indefinitely. She's willing to work projects, but she's going to get a degree at Cornell, and I'm sorry, I can't remember a second degree. I can't remember what it's in. But that's okay. We're in great shape. And it's earlier than I expected we might be in this position. So it's good. But we're ready for it. She helped train Jessup to do the voucher work, some of the voucher work she was doing, which is great. So then I have these asks. So there was a radar sign that was budgeted for in fiscal year 2023-24 that was delayed in delivery by the vendor. So that I need to ask if this board would encumber $2,850 from fiscal year 23-24 in the traffic control line to pay for this radar sign. And I can't make that motion.
It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, so we don't encumber it. Then we have excess fund balance, and we just go over it deadline this year, either or.
I thought this is the way I was supposed to do it, so I don't know what, you tell me what you want to do.
What's the dollar amount?
It is $2,850.
All right, then I would entertain a motion to encumber $2,850 from the 2023-24 budget for the purchase of a radar sign. If someone would like to move that.
So moved.
Second,
Any questions on what we just did?
And we can do that even though we closed out that year, or we not closed out that year yet.
It has not been, we are in, I checked in with, we're all, it's still not completely audited and I extended the AFR.
It's not technically closed until it's audited,
And finals submitted to the state, which hasn't.
and that's why I say it's 6 of one. Yeah,
Right.
it would be $2,850
Over.
under budget.
Under budget.
And that money sits in the general fund anyway. So then
So this is what probably approved a quote, but the money hasn't left because we didn't actually get
Right.
thing yet, and so
Right.
we're encumbering it as we anticipated using
But
it.
you're right, it's an encumbrance instead of a budget modification. That would have just happened. Almost.
Any other comments or questions on?
No.
Encumbering prior year's balances? If not, then all in favor of the aforementioned encumbrance, please say aye.
aye.
Any opposed?
And note to the treasurer, the mayor does not like being encumbered. So my other ask is, I would like to ask that this board consider using $80,500 from the water debt reserve, F234, to pay for the bond that was taken out to do the water improvement system. There's currently 139,000 in that debt reserve. And I've confirmed from various sources, including the OSC, that it just needs a board resolution due to the nature of that fund.
I would move that we pay that bond payment from reserves.
Yeah, from the debt reserve, the water debt
Water
reserve.
debt reserve.
34. So it will then go into that checking account, but come from. Does that make sense?
We have a motion and a second.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Yes, second.
Any comments or questions? Right, so there's bond payment that's in the voucher we just approved.
Right.
Will get paid from the water debt reserve.
It'll essentially be a internal general journal transaction that moves the money. And I need the permission to move the money from the banks and then the general journal, but the check will still come from the fund you're looking at.
All right, no, I understand.
Okay. That was also me making sure I did the right thing.
Any other comments or questions? None, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay, and my last ask is with the clerk department, which is that INHS for 46 South Street required that there be some revision in the street address assignment, which is in the Dropbox. And the reason for them needing to do this is that the private property owners did not want letters. They didn't want alphanumerical designations. They just wanted all numerical designations for those lots. And so that was not the way it was set initially.
Okay, so we have a resolution in the Dropbox stating that updated designated street addresses for the following tax parcels. There are 5 parcels which are being renumbered. Whereas the Tompkins County Department of Emergency Response oversees emergency dispatch and communication systems and allows residents to dial 911, and whereas 911 is the number to report a police, fire, or medical emergency that requires the immediate presence of police officers, firefighters, or emergency medical personnel, and whereas new address designations are approved by municipalities governing body. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees authorizes and approves the aforementioned addresses as assigned. Someone like to move that?
So moved. Second.
Motion.
Marcia takes it.
Any questions?
So
Yep.
each number is an address for one property.
Except for the ones, so the
First
first 2 property tax map IDs are multi-unit,
Okay, got it.
and then the last 3 are single residences.
Correct.
Multi-unit, okay,
So those are gonna be like the townhouses.
but they're numbers.
So like one,
Apartment 24,
right, one tax
apartment
parcel
26.
has these dwelling units on it, but they
Right.
can be owned.
But each unit has a number.
Right.
Right, instead of apartment 1, 2, 3, it'll have its own unique street address.
Right.
I just think it's confusing.
Just wait till you add PO boxes to it. It's really fun. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
That is all from this desk.
Okay. Moving on to old business. Something we've done multiple times in recent years and always have to do it again. We have a resolution which approves or authorizes me to sign the municipal cooperative agreement for the 2024 year that we are more than halfway through as our membership in the Health Consortium. New York State's Department of Financial Services did not like a standing authorization for chief executive to sign this. They wanted renewed by resolution every year. So here we are. I won't read all of it. It's the same as we've always approved in the past. As a member of the Health Consortium, we're agreeing to the municipal cooperative agreement, which is amended from time to time, including every time we add new membership, which is pretty much every year. We have as many as 14 new municipalities joining in January.
Wow.
So we'll be doing this again. And so I would entertain a motion to approve and authorize the chief elected official of the Village of Trumansburg to sign the 2024 amendment to the municipal cooperative agreement, which was effective January of this year, of the Greater Tompkins County Municipal Health Insurance Consortium.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Yep.
Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
How many are in it now?
62 municipalities, 64 municipalities. With 13 or 14 to join in January. Total consortium budget's at 87 million next year.
It's awesome.
We'll get 100 million here pretty soon. Next item of old business, well, it's more newer than older, but it's not brand new, is we have a quote to consider for the early planning phases of our new fire and EMS facility. The proposal is from MRB. It is slow to load. My screen. To begin doing initial planning and engineering. So as everyone knows, we've received $3.5 million in congressional funding. We have submitted a grant application for an additional only 1.5 million from a New York State volunteer fire infrastructure and response equipment grant. We don't know when that's going to be awarded. And then we have to have longer conversations about where we've already had some of those conversations, but longer conversations about where the additional funding will come from. But that does not mean that we can't start with what you see in the proposal. So the first part of the proposal is for MRB to meet with Chief Taylor and Joel and myself to review the 2021 kind of list of needs for the building. See what can be, see what's a definite need versus a need that's more of a want. And really kind of condense and solidify what the building needs to contain. There's a hourly not to exceed estimate for that work. And then there's a conceptual plan, which includes a building footprint. This is not architecture, but it's a building footprint, initial kind of designs for the building, an hourly not to exceed dollar amount in there. When we're at the stage where we can clearly define the specific site location, there will be a need for engineering to evaluate that, as well as any seeker work that might need to be done, preparing that if necessary. There's an hourly not to exceed quote for that. And then there's applications for additional grants and financing. And then there's the actual architecture feasibility report, which is not the architecture itself. It's preliminary architecture work. So we have a total proposed dollar amount for each of the stages, which would total up to $65,000, $65,050. This is reimbursable from the funding we have. But we're doing this in a parallel time because the grant funding, the mechanism to draw that money isn't established yet. So the money sits there, and we know who our liaison is. It's being administered through USDA. But we can't actually start getting reimbursed for anything yet. But when we can, this is eligible.
And MRB is our point person. If we have other people that are interested in this, do we bid this out, this particular part of it out?
I am suggesting we do not bid the engineer, this part of it.
Okay,
This is not build work. Build work would get bid. This is more because they wrote the grants, because they have the history. This is closer to, it's not exactly project management, but it's closer to the project management end.
okay,
Once, and this is pre-architecture, right? So then once, if we get through all of these phases,
right,
at the end of this phase, we would have a location, site mapped, seeker completed, and preliminary architectural planning, which would then be bid out to an architectural firm to do the drawings.
okay,
And then we would bid the construction work after the architects are done.
okay,
So this proposal would get us to best case, fastest possible case, would get us to spring of 25. Then we'd be looking at architects and bidding, and we'd be looking at architects, engineering, and construction bidding sometime next year for construction to start in spring of 26. That's best case, that's fastest. But the coordination with USDA and the steps that are in the proposal can start now.
we gotta start.
Is there anything, what's holding us up from being able to draw from the grant?
USDA,
So that's just time, on their side.
they have had Lori and they said probably this fall. Okay. Something between September and November. This does not commit us to read through the financing piece. This does not commit us to financing through USDA. But they have already opened up the informational process to apply for USDA loans if we need loans for the balance.
I mean, yeah, I'm with Marcia. We gotta start somewhere. Might as well start moving things
Yeah,
along.
we absolutely have to, because the longer this procrastinates, the more expensive it gets.
Well, that's for dang sure. As someone who's
I mean, we're gonna be,
looking to add to my own house. Doesn't get any cheaper.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion to accept the proposal for professional services from MRB Group for the initial planning phase of the Trumansburg Fire and EMS facility.
So moved.
Second.
Additional questions, comments? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
I
Any opposed? Okay. The piece I wanted to add on behalf of Deputy Mayor Carver, at the bottom of the Dropbox, we have two documents. One says quote, the other says quote one. These are quotes from NYSEG for necessary infrastructure upgrades at the two locations where we will be siting our EV chargers. These would be the fast chargers. So there needs to be some upgrades made to the infrastructure at Corey Street and here in the parking lot. It's here in the parking lot. So slow. So the first one that says quote, that's the Corey Street one. Oh, it's all the way at the bottom of the file. Might have to refresh. Yeah, 15 East Main, so that's this parking lot. So there's about, it's roughly, it's $7,741.66 here. And $7,119.62 down at Quarry Street. These will both be reimbursed from the Make Ready grant that we received. It's a reimbursable grant, so we have to pay for it, and then we get reimbursed again sometime this fall.
Okay,
And
where does that come out of? What do we pay that out of?
this would be, well, when the grant is reimbursed, we will have a grant revenue line.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Spending side will be grant spending side.
Okay,
In the meantime, we'll have to pay for it out of general.
general fund.
And only NICEAG can do the work because they own the lines. So I would entertain a motion to approve both of the NICEAG quotes as presented for the infrastructure upgrades needed for the 2 EV charging sites.
So moved.
Second,
Any questions? Comments? None, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Water sewer base rate review. This sounds like.
Oh, it's a riot. So, Jessica had mentioned that there's an intention to look through each of these accounts one by one to kind of double check everything and make sure we're doing everything by the book. We've been changing quite a bit about billing recently, and part of the conversation that has come up recently is around how we assign base rates. So if you think about your sewer and water bill, you have one base rate for sewer, one base rate for water, and then you have the usage on top of it, as well as the capital charge. Those are kind of all the different parts of a bill. When that's pretty straightforward when we talk about houses, dwellings, individual dwellings, each get one base rate of water, one base rate of sewer, the capital charge. The question then is, what do we do for commercial units that don't have a dwelling? How do we map that? What do we do there? What we have been working through so far has been to take the average amount of water that a household uses in the village, call that one unit. And then if, and then so it's currently the calculation we've been using is 50,000 gallons in a year. So if a business is using 50,000 gallons, they get one base unit, one sewer unit, one capital charge. If they use $100,000 or 100,000 gallons, sorry, that would be two, right? That had been our intention, at least through the resolutions, as far as I can understand them. We have not actually completed the shift to that yet. So currently we have the EDU, the capital charges are done this way. The base rate for water and sewer are whatever they used to be prior to this. In most cases, that's one water unit for, I think, pretty much everyone in the village. And the sewer base rates are kind of all over the place because they didn't used to have that usage component. So there was kind of a different places got different number of sewer units trying to maybe approximate usage, but it was very hit or miss, and it didn't reflect changes in actual use over time if a building went from a restaurant to a movie store to a restaurant or back or whatever. So anyhow, all of that to say, we're back here to discuss how we want to move forward. And I think part of this conversation for tonight does not mean making a decision yet. We could decide, hey, we want to look at this more information. What do we want to pull out? Maybe as part of that review, what do we want to put together, and might kind of make a decision here. But in general, what it does mean is that when I calculated the anticipated revenue for water and sewer, I was doing it under the impression that if you were using 100,000 gallons, you're going to pay two base rates of water and two base rates of sewer. Currently, that is not the case. And so we are probably coming in under my revenue projections. Jessica has looked at the current like actual revenue costs to date, and we're in the black still, so we're not like wildly under. But we should make sure we have an actual answer to what we want to be doing here going forward, and then figure out how to apply that. So I think broadly speaking, the options I see are we could jump right to kind of rolling out the base rates based on water usage, as our resolutions, I think, have been saying. That would be a large shift to those commercial users kind of in one go. So that might be a bit much. We could phase that in, which is something we've done in a bunch of different scenarios. Wouldn't require us changing any of the law or resolutions or anything. We could phase that in. Or we could kind of take a bigger step back and rethink this a little bit under the thought that the way that it is currently structured, maybe we don't feel is a fair way to spread it across commercial users versus residential users. And if we go that route, we could kind of look at how we adjust the calculation a bit to spread the costs differently between commercial and residential users. At the end of the day, the system costs what it costs. It has to generate the revenue to offset those costs. There's a question of how do we allocate between residential versus commercial and across different types of commercial.
So you're saying residential is okay, how we've calculated it so far, we haven't probably done due diligence on the commercial side to make sure we're recovering those expenses.
That's basically it. Any changes we made from here would happen primarily to commercial and multi-unit, like apartment buildings. Mostly because the fact that like for single family dwellings, it's just a dwelling and it's flat and it doesn't change. We don't have these questions of how does that map to this and the other thing? How do we reflect the school versus LB versus, you know, the something else, right? So, well, I don't think we would see much in the way of changes to residential, but it does have more of an impact when we talk about non-residential dwellings.
And you're saying there's a way to maybe phase that in over time?
So certainly the easiest thing would be to just phase it in. We could say maybe, you know, we switch it, we go halfway and let that sit for 2 or 3 billing periods, and then we go the rest of the way after that. And that would be with our current structure that we have in place. Alternatively, we could, you know, have more of a conversation of, does the current structure we have in place, do we want to adjust that in some way? Do we want to say, hey, we thought 50,000 was kind of the average house. But if you look at, you know, that average house is an average of a bunch of 1-unit apartment buildings and also, you know, a family of 5, maybe we say, we actually want to look more like what's the family of 5 use and use that as our baseline that we compare commercial buildings to versus a 1-unit apartment building. So we can play around with those things. That would require us to go back and change the sewer law and make some other adjustments, but we can have that conversation. I think the reason I'm bringing this up is because when Jess and I were looking at how much it would increase some of the commercial bills, it felt big, not like overwhelmingly big, but it felt big.
Right, and I'm concerned about that because we need those people desperately.
When was the last and final water increase?
Last,
Water increase. So let's see, it was September, was it March?
I think it was
I
March.
think it was March.
Of this
Yeah, I can,
Mhm.
and then we did sewer, the
and I think you're
scheduled
right.
last increase would have then been just this past billing, and then it was static.
So we don't really know how many dwellings it would affect, or how many, I guess, commercial businesses.
Not yet, that study was just begun last week when this first came to light.
So when you're reviewing, that would give us more data, right? With her reviewing all of those water cards, right? All of the
Yes, but
Yeah.
it doesn't actually have to have that. It doesn't hinge on just on that detail. I have isolated and started a spreadsheet that I shared with trustee Darker last week. So I'm pretty close and just need a couple more days to say, this is what it would look like for these accounts that are above one dwelling unit. Cause we're coming from this from a, in collaboration, but I have some deep concern that it will be a significant change. And I'm wondering if it's financially necessary.
So on the water side, I have to think about sewer, so I'm still adjusting the usage one ahead. But on the water side, I'd like to see when, so we just had water bills, right?
Yep. Well, it's 1st of July. They'll come out 1st of July.
Well, let me say one thing on, I think there are two pieces I would like to pull apart a little bit. One is looking at the actual revenue and the actual costs and questioning maybe even our rates are too high and maybe we could back off a bit. And I think that's one conversation we should absolutely look into. The other question is, how do we divvy this out across the community? And we need to have like a structure for that. Because right now what we have is sewer that was put together 50 years ago and the units don't match anything that make any sense. And we need a structure that we can point to and say, here's why your bill is X or Y.
Right.
And so I think we can tease those apart a little bit, because even if we say, look, we're in the black, we don't actually need any more revenue. We still need a sane
We're still gonna
way
need some.
to decide how do we divvy this up.
So my first priority with respect to water is getting general paid back. So that's why I'm curious if the final water if the most recent final water rate change was March. Then at the end of the next billing, at the end of the September billing cycle, we'll be halfway through, we'll have good estimates. For the annual revenue. If we're in the black, and we can say that general will be paid back in X amount of time. Then we'll easily be able to target. Do we keep the rates where they are or leave them? We keep rates where they are and leave them or back them off. But I agree that whether we have to back them off or God forbid, find out we have to increase, it needs to be spread out in a way that makes sense.
So we're halfway through the billing cycle now for the year, right?
The calendar year, the fiscal year?
Yeah.
No. Well, sort of.
Almost.
May, so May is our fiscal year, so we
Right.
just went July.
Oh.
We're just completed the first
Doesn't
bill.
matter whether it's
Right.
calendar or fiscal.
Right.
That's why I was
Right.
asking.
The
for
change was
question.
that's what I'm saying, from March.
So and the other thing to consider, without mentioning any accounts, we are looking at an account currently that is calculated for 12 EDUs, but currently paying 3 water units and 3 sewer units. So to make that without any, and it's not a standalone, and that's a concern.
Right.
But now I think the way you said it today, I finally understand. Fine, make it all 12. And if that's too much, then how can a rate be adjusted, or how do we look at commercial rates versus residential rates, or?
But we're saying they should be 12 based on their usage.
If EDUs equals sewer units. So your first 1,000 gallons are the first 1,000 gallons of a unit are the most expensive gallons. So you would now be having this.
EDU is 50,000 gallons a year.
Right. So the EDUs are the base unit is how we spread across the fixed cost of the system. So right now, we're not. Based on the calculation, which maybe we're raising more than we need, was not going to cover that fixed cost.
Right, but what I'm saying is if an EDU is 50,000 gallons and they're 12, they should
Right.
be 12.
Right,
And that means they're using 600,000 gallons of water.
right. Or that, I don't know, unless that's 12 units of dwellings.
No, it's commercial
It's
usage.
commercial. So then, yeah,
But
that would be
say
one of
their
the
first-
very high water users.
And they would be, their first 12,000 gallons would be the most expensive.
Right, because that's
usage.
how
So
the
that makes their monthly bump. their monthly
Right.
base bump up.
Well, the
Right.
easiest thing to do, just now I'm taking a step back, just conceptual. The easiest thing to do from a conceptual stand would be what we talked about, Ulysses a couple of times, which is, and we could have a completely different rate for water for commercial users. So users over a certain number qualify as commercial. And then treat it as come up with, the budget has to balance, to come up with a straight per gallon charge. No base rate. The purpose of the base rate in residential is to be able to spread out those costs with some equitability between people who use a lot, and people who use a little. To spread out some, it's called some baseline amount among everyone. And then high users pay the extra. Commercial, I don't know if that's the same. Conceptually, I don't know if that's the same. And if a commercial water user, whether they're filling up a truck from a hydrant or a high user restaurant, whatever, that's what they're there for.
Right,
They're
that's
not-
their
They're
service,
not suddenly gonna stop using water.
right, like the laundromat, for example.
Right, great example,
Right.
car wash.
Car wash. Right,
And the other piece of the residential side is we have to smooth. We have to smooth the revenue of the water department a little bit in case everyone goes on vacation. There's water usage. But commercial, it doesn't. You know, so when they. Close for the holidays, I mean, that's not necessarily apply, I don't think.
Yeah,
So we're talking about roughly 80 accounts, 75 accounts above one. Not all of those are commercial, so do you wanna, think more about it, I'm sorry, I'm just interrupting your thought process, tell me the kind of study you wanna see. And I can extrapolate that, I was starting off in my own direction of how I would assess this model. Of the fiscal health of what's already happening and the impact, should we just carry forward without any rate change? So that we can see what that would look like.
do you happen to know, is it
I just didn't get to.
in most cases, is everyone has one water unit? That's like off,
Are you talking about, are we talking about not residential?
non-residential, I
No.
think, okay,
No, that would not be accurate.
so you're saying there's 80 overusers and they're not all commercial, or they?
I was just looking at the sheet that I have
Okay.
and some of the calculated. Their EDUs above one, I just wanted us to get a picture. We're not talking about a giant amount of people. It is a task that can get studied without weeks.
Right,
Yeah, and so I can't answer that question exactly right
okay,
now, Marcia, I'm sorry.
no, that's fine. So maybe we ought to just look at that and then come back for a little bit more discussion.
yeah. I think, I'm trying to think of like. I mean, what I'm hearing what you're saying, Roden, and I think I'm only hesitating because it's pretty large difference from where we've been. But I am slowly coming around to the idea that when we say, you know, one EDU, maybe instead of it's 50,000 gallons, maybe it's 100,000 gallons. And that helps reduce the number of units that these commercial buildings are gonna see. So instead of 12, it's 6.
Okay,
It does require us kind of going back and amending the law, but laws are there to be amended.
You think
Because-
specifically of silver.
I think on both sides, you would have a water unit per EDU, but if it was 100,000 gallons a year, not 50, that would be, you know, you'd still maybe pay 2 or 3 base units. But it wouldn't be as shocking. And then the same thing on the sewer side, both of them. The formula we would use to figure out how many base units are you paying every billing period would be your EDUs, but we would have an EDU just be a much higher amount of gallons.
Have you ever changed EDs for the school?
yes, but not water and sewer.
Yeah, just the The only
Right.
place we've applied EUs has been the capital charge at this point.
Right,
So we've not applied and you changed.
we have. Yes,
We applied it to the base rate.
no base rates have changed. EDUs were calculated for the school, EDUs were assessed to the school. Like other commercial accounts.
I think that's the crux of it, is it's only been applied. Kurt, am I right? Was it, we've only used the EDU calculation for the capital charge line?
Yeah.
Not for base units.
Not for
How
base
many
rates.
EDs does the school do?
So the school has several accounts. So, and they're all listed as 1 Week Street. So we have 5, 8, 6, and 2.
And
We didn't have EDUs. We didn't have a capital
how many
charge before.
base units that,
I mean, basically, I mean, EDUs.
So I just read you the EDUs for the capital charge and their units
5, 8, 6.
are. Water units are all 1. Sewer units are variable, including one account that's 100.
which I think is also, we'll see some like that account line. Will certainly come down cost. So it kind of goes to these numbers that picked from a hat 50 years ago.
For this board's discussion, I'm inclined to carry on with the sheet the way I went to say, this is what it would look like if we made the change as proposed in the current resolution.
Mhm.
This is the billing cycle, or the bills that we have, right, from March to March, or move forward till present, or, and the revenue and expenses. And then you can play the margins.
I would assume they are our biggest water user.
I'm not sure.
Working at a school, I think we probably.
Yeah, I think Compass is.
Oh, yeah. I didn't take that into consideration.
There have been years when the golf courses.
I mean, if you look at
I think
calculations.
I'd wanna see more, just
Yeah,
because
I-
I'm still, I still don't understand EDU, and then the things that you were discussing
Yeah,
confuse me.
I'd love to be
even
able to
more.
figure out a simpler way to,
Don't
talk
share
about
that
this.
sheet I started. It's
No, no,
very
that's fine.
confusing. And like a
No, yeah,
rainbow
that, I don't
of my
think,
mind. It's the rainbow of my mind.
I don't think it will help. I wish it would.
But initially, my
It will
thought
eventually.
would have been that homes or residences should be different than commercial or business. It shouldn't be calculated the same because it just doesn't, it's not, you're not comparing,
Apples to apples.
right? You're not comparing the same usage.
What I loved it, like, I feel like the question for us is a little bit of like, how do we think about the pie? Like, if we, maybe there's a way to put this together. If we think of the, 100% of the cost, and maybe we think about, I don't know, water usage between residential and non-residential uses, or maybe we think about just number of accounts between those two buckets or something, and then look at the cost spread.
That's what I
Across
was
the two of
wondering. Can
them?
we take those commercial units and put them in one bucket and residential in another bucket? And then maybe there's a way to piece that out amongst the commercial bucket.
But
Yeah.
is there a way to make sure that is consistent throughout?
Right.
You can't have the individual living. You can't have the residents with a single resident paying, I was making up numbers.
Right.
$10 a gallon for water. And then the commercial user at 600,000 gallons a year, paying 50 cents a gallon.
Mhm.
Right.
But as long as those two relative charges are close, then you could have a base rate on the residential side to smooth their inconsistent usage.
Is there a way to charge commercial or however you want, non-residential actual rate instead of doing like this base idea?
Potentially, I mean, it is going back to the drawing board on a lot of this, which I'm.
Oh, so you're saying charging a commercial rate for water
Right.
versus a rate?
Because if you really are thinking about the types of businesses that we have. A store where people just go to shop, nobody's really using. The bathroom there other than maybe the owner. It's gonna have a lot less usage than, like we said earlier, a restaurant.
I think the problem there, and that's an interesting example, is that. The cost of actual water pumping is like pretty minimal compared to all the other overhead costs. And so if we just charge, I think it's one thing to say, you're the laundromat, you're Little Venice doing a lot of cooking. You're gonna have a pretty high flow, you're gonna always be paying a considerable amount of money. But if it is, right, the one shopkeeper who's using the bathroom every so often. You're not going to ever get to the point where you're covering just the fact that it costs a lot of money to run a pipe to your house and to have water there when you
So
want
what
it.
if that was the base cost for the business then, is the.
I mean, I think that's where
cost
the,
of running?
I think the. Which I guess I don't know where you're going with that, but the base rate is there to basically say that there's a lot of fixed cost in the system. We're gonna take that fixed cost and spread it across everybody. And then the variable cost of how much it takes to pump the water and for Dusty to go down and check the, chemicals daily or whatever, that is the variable cost that we will put on the actual amount of water you use. But
It's
we,
like Ben said, it costs what it costs. I mean, the whole system. And to pump the water here and to maintain it and
Right.
everything.
So the EDU. 50,000 per gallons isn't necessarily just the cost of 50,000 gallons, it's also.
yeah, the 50,000 gallons is just what's the average household use, and then trying to have some way to connect, how do we charge a commercial building that doesn't have any dwellings in it?
It's also the system cost.
It's also included the system, yeah, and
Mhm.
it's, I can't remember the split.
We have to separate all of that out from the capital charge piece, which is the
Debt
debt
payments.
The
payments.
debt payment. for-
Okay.
Have to be spread out evenly among users as a fixed charge.
Which-
Water pumping and overhead can be variable, but I'm not suggesting this, but it's an interesting thought experiment, because I have looked at other municipal water suppliers, and essentially how they do it, and there are some that do a straight per gallon charge. And I think they look back and say a 3 or 4 year rolling average of usage, and a 3 or 4 year rolling average of cost. Divide one by the other and you get a per gallon charge.
Hmm.
And then they basically say if our residents, if it's a really dry year and our residents use a lot of water, we're gonna make more and we're not gonna rebate it. Because the next year might be a low usage. And now we've got to eat the difference because our costs are still our costs. And I'd be nervous about making that big of a change. But it might be an interesting place to start and then back into the base
Yeah.
piece to smooth.
It'd be interesting to see which ones are doing that too, because I think we are, because of the small nature of our system, we are in a much different space than even say like Bolton Point, because we have primarily fixed costs and actually pretty little, very small variable costs comparatively versus a much larger system where once you've got the well, once you've got the pump, you can pump it 24/7 or for 2 hours a day, but it doesn't, it's basically a lot of the same costs.
Do we
So
have to attach the gallon number to EDU? I think that maybe is what is.
say
Do you have to attach like one EDU is
Mhm.
equal to 50,000 gallons? Like, do you have to?
well, you need some way of figuring out how to apportion an EDU to a business. That's the trick. And so the way we've done it is based on X number of gallons. 50,000 is the number we pick, but we could pick a different number.
But the,
within
what,
reason.
the capital charge part is equitably spread. That unless you want to change, unless it's,
But
Not
not
the
the
right
these
rate.
commercial.
no, the capital charge part
It's the
is,
same.
the capital charge part
Well, I mean, if we're,
is equally spread out between residential and commercial. The sewer unit, the base unit fee of $39 and the base unit fee $36.40 or something for sewer are not evenly spread out. And those units, that's a fixed monthly cost, right? So if you're currently paying one water unit and then you pay two water units, your base just to have water doubles. You're going from, we'll say $35 to $70 a month, regardless of what you use.
right, because that's how we split out the fixed cost of the system. So I think if you're gonna
Right.
say that EDUs are, that the capital charges are equitably spread right now, then if we were to use the same mechanism, the EDU mechanism to split out the base rates, that would also be equitable.
But I question the cost of the base unit. And I think it wouldn't actually be proportionate
Well, so the well,
because you're paying, my first 12,000 gallons, if I have 12 units, is the most expensive water, but you would only be paying.
but it's because it's not about water usage. It's
I know,
about
but it
fixed
comes
cost
with
of the
$1,000, so
system.
I'm paying more monthly than you.
That's just literally, we took the cost of $1,000 unit of gallons and added it to a base rate.
No, I get it, I know, but I'm, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why that's where our communication has fallen down, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure you just want to finish the sheet
Okay.
to show you that part.
So
More
does
discussion.
it make sense to, like, these places that have 20 EDUs or 12 EDUs? Does it make sense for them to be charged 12 times what a unit? Or what
That
one
I-
household? Like, I
Yeah.
think that's where,
That's basically the
That's the
question.
yeah,
Yeah, right now, we're charging them 12 times 12 times more for
Okay.
the capital piece.
see, I came all the way around.
Yeah, should we also be charging them? Should we also be charging them 12 times more for the fixed cost in the system on both the water and the sewer side?
And I guess when those increases were made. Or when these assumptions were. When these changes were made that these businesses had 12 or 20 or whatever. Were they notified in advance that they would be paying a higher rate?
Yeah, we did a lot of notification, and I think what broke down was the communication between what I was envisioning with shifts and how I got handed over to the front office, and there have been people changing over the
During
front
an
office.
administration change.
Right, and so,
So they knew and they were like, oh, we got, we're
Yeah,
paying
yeah.
less.
Fun,
Okay.
yes, exactly.
and did they know like every last detail of it? Probably they didn't
Right.
understand every nuance of it, but they did get a lot of notification that billing was gonna change and rates were gonna change. It was gonna
They don't.
impact.
We definitely, in my 2 years in the office, we did not say, by the way, which means your water units assigned and your sewer units assigned.
Right.
Change. I didn't send.
Right, I don't think, like,
saying that.
We weren't as specific and exact.
Yeah.
If we had been, I don't think we would have
We wouldn't
overseen.
be here.
We would be here, but
So that's an interesting thought. The way you just phrased that. It makes sense for the capital charge for a user regardless. If they're a user that has been calculated as 12 EDUs. High volume user. Makes sense that the capital charge is 12 times a single user because of new infrastructure placed. Can we make the argument that their base rate does not need to also be 12 times? Because they are in fact being charged for their high volume use by virtue of variable costs associated with more or less water usage.
I still don't think that it covered, I still don't think it equitably splits out the fixed costs in the system, in my mind, but the idea of everyone gets one base of water and one base of sewer for dwelling / commercial building is at least a workable system. It's better than what we have, which is a non-workable system.
Which was a
Count on the
non-workable
property during the
system.
survey in 1955.
But I would personally feel more comfortable with going back and taking another crack at what do we consider an EDU and how much gallons are in that. Because I still think you end up with, yes, you're paying more on that variable cost, but it does not actually begin to cover the difference between the laundromat and someone who uses the bathroom twice a day for the proprietor. You're still not spreading out the fixed cost of the system equitably across those two. So I think I'm happy for us to table this at that point till we have
So
more
we have some
data.
Yeah.
Populated cells.
You and I can go back and forth on what exactly should be in that and like,
I'm just gonna give you raw data
yeah,
and then you can, and then you can,
I can try and
you,
put
the
things
board
together.
can say,
Right,
this
yeah.
is where we could shift and make things work.
And I'll see what I can do to put it together, and we can at least run like, in my mind, I would at least want to see the two scenarios of like today's versus what if we doubled the EDU calculation to 100,000. I think we could easily justify that.
Might also. It might also be an argument for the lower base rate and the higher usage charge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, well, and I think we can. It'll be a little
it's-
harder, but to try and go back and take another crack at
We
where
can do
are
that.
we
Yeah.
financially and look at what those
Right,
rates are. But you're saying,
especially when we had a while back. Much higher per gallon use.
Well, that's true, too.
yeah.
Or
Yeah.
lower base rate,
right.
we had talked about it. from
yeah, right,
conservation.
yeah,
And the
And
conservation.
it actually makes sense for the 1,000,000 gallon user versus the 20,000 gallon user.
right.
Contributing more to the ongoing fixed costs by virtue of the fact that they're paying more for the expert.
Right, yeah. Yes, yeah, we could definitely look at, I think right now it's. At least on the water side, I think it's pretty roughly split like by our actual. Budget, like what's fixed and what's variable, but we also, that doesn't have to be how we decide that too.
So because I have to answer the questions to the customers, right, and the messaging center, I'm really keen on getting this data to you all as soon as possible, like this week. And especially in advance of the next billing cycle if possible. So, and I'll get it to Ben
When do bills go out?
September 1st.
We're not gonna have another meeting before that unless we really have to. So.
I don't think we're gonna fix the base rate.
I don't think
No.
we are. I think we can,
I'm still gonna shoot to get it. to
I
you.
think we can. sit
yeah, I think we
for a
can,
bit,
we can
right?
keep going back and forth. I'd love to have a better recommendation for the board and maybe some way of thinking through that.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm correct, right? We wanna look at water sewer fund actuals starting in March of last year. To go through, when do you want to
You
see?
said the last water increase
Was
this
March,
past-
was
this
this
past
March of
March.
24.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I just want to see March of
March.
24
back a year,
through the end of September
yeah.
of this year.
Year, right.
Once you
Oh,
collect it,
just to see what the full.
Yeah.
Okay,
to see 6 months.
got it. Okay.
Thank you all for your collective brain power on that.
What's left of it?
It's starting to look like it's-
Exactly.
Any other items of old business? Do we have any items of new business? Do we have anyone from the public for our second public comment period?
Looks like not.
Then I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss EMS personnel as well as an ongoing legal matter.
Yes, and
So
I
moved.
second that.
All in favor?
I
Uh,